What is a crucial scene and why is this a thing that not even Chris or Melanie ever talked about? So if you look at any quad of, look here at this here. So if you start up in universe, and for those of you, the people who are here watching it live pretty much already know this, but I'm just going to go over it again just for everybody's sake. But if you look here and you look at a typical quad, you have past, progress, future, and present. And then if you go to mind, you have memory, preconscious, subconscious, conscious. And everything that you see presented in the model is at the model at rest. So all four towers, everything is equally balanced. There's no inequity. So it's a very static sort of nice little thing. And so there is no story in that basic. When you go into the premise builder and you start moving things around and you start setting different dynamics to mess up the story and to pick where you want the story to actually go, what direction, particularly down at the bottom when you pick the actual specific element, what it does is it upsets that tender balance of everything that you have going on and will move things out of place so that universe might switch with mind. The whole thing might rotate. Melanie talks about in her thing, or in some of her books, she talks about rotates and that it either rotates clockwise or counterclockwise. Point of fact, what it really does is it rotates through time. So it either moves forward or backwards, which is what she means by rotating left or right. So for a perfectly balanced setup here, you have participants out. So in a perfectly balanced setup, you have knowledge, the knowledge element in the upper left, thought in the lower right, ability in the upper right, and desire here in the lower left. So that's the perfect balance of this spatial sort of elements. And then temporally, it goes in a Z pattern. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you either go forward in time or you go backwards in time. You can start a little bit later in time. You can start a little bit earlier in time. And then that's how the different mindsets justify. So for linear mindsets, they tend to justify by flipping things. So it's like a binary choice. So the past might be flipped with the present, whereas a holistic mindset might shift things temporarily so that you start with present and then go to past, progress, and future. Or you might go backwards and you might actually start with the future and go present, past, progress. That's how things move. And then a story does a combination of both, depending on different dynamics. I think I should probably stop there, but doing all that stuff is what upsets the balance of the story and then gives you what you find out at the end, which is what your story form is, which is where you would find something like, I'll just do the prestige here, where everything is out of balance such that when you look at the story form, that one's in order. Like this one goes learning, doing, obtaining, understanding. That's been put out of order. The influence character through line, conscious, preconscious, memory, and subconscious is a very different arrangement than that memory, preconscious, subconscious, conscious. And then as you go down, that changes even more. So like here, sense of self, state of being, situation, circumstances. But you'll notice in some of them, so this is actually a really good example here. So here are the 4 through lines of the first act of the Prestige. And if you notice, the influence character and the relationship through line are the same Z pattern that you will find in the model. So if I went to doing, you would see wisdom, skill, experience, and enlightenment here. So come into here, wisdom, skill, experience, enlightenment. So that's a typical Z pattern. So there's no disruption in the story in this area. It's very much at rest, not as important to the meaning of the story as the other place. Same thing here for the relationship story through line, which goes through truth, suspicion, evidence, and falsehood. If I go into truth, you'll see here on the right, truth, evidence, suspicion, falsehood. It's in a Z pattern. Everything is nice and balanced. But if you look at the objective story plot and then the main character through line, you'll notice that these are out of whack. So you have sense of self, state of being, situation, and circumstance, which is sense of self, state of being, situation, circumstance. It's a totally different pattern. So that means this is an important area because this is where the inequity is coming up from. So this is an important part to pay attention to based on the kind of story you want to tell. Same thing with the objective story: work, attraction, repulsion, and attempt. If I go to that, same thing: work, attraction, backwards. Should be instead. Wrong. Oh, maybe it's the next one. Work, attraction. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that one's the same thing. That one's so here it's just the character. It's here. So here, interdiction, destiny, fate, and prediction. So if I go into interdiction, that's the one that's messed up. So interdiction, destiny, fate, and prediction does its own kind of thing. And it's not that it's random, but it'll be different for different stories where the area it gets messed up in. So that's just down at the scene level. Then when you go down to the scene beats, like the character elements, that's where it really starts. And so that's like where if you threw the pebble in the pond and you get the ripples, it's like where the splash is. It's like it's the key part of the rest of the story. So what I have done is, and then all the other scenes will be the typical Z pattern. So for the most part, you have 64 different scenes. Then I thought there were only going to be 2 crucial scenes, but as it turns out, there's either going to be 1 crucial scene, 2 crucial scenes, or 3. 1, 2, or 3, depending on different dynamics. They'll have a different emphasis on the story given the way that the model makes the story. And then the rest of these 61 scenes are not that they're not important, but they are less important in terms of the meaning of the story. What I've done is, and I will do this later today, it just occurred to me that you can't see. I have all the stories here because I make them, but then when I present them, I need to make it so that you can see them, because the only place you can actually see the crucial scenes are in your story. So for instance, one of the examples that I did first thing this morning was, let's do planes, trains. I'm sorry, I'll be here actually. Planes and trains. Okay. So this is planes, trains, and automobiles. And so when you first open up your story, you get the usual narrative here. And what I've done is I've attached the crucial scene part here just below. And what it does is it goes through your entire story form and it looks for where the disruption is. And it says, ooh, okay, this is not your typical Z pattern. This needs to be brought to attention. And so in planes, trains, and automobiles, there are 2 places where that happens. One, in the influence character signpost here. So this is signpost 1, scene 2. So one of the crucial scenes is part of the influence character through line. And another one of the crucial scenes is here in the relationship story through line. And so I identified where it is so that if you want to, you can jump right to that part in your story and work it out. Currently, I just have the actual elements listed here. Either today or tomorrow, I'll have it so that it has the different modalities, so that it has situation, activity, mentality, and standpoint, which by the way is change stance to standpoint just because stance has always bothered me. And then the potential, resistance, current, and power. And then the growth, expansion, transformation, and transcendence. Those will be here, and it'll look exactly like it does in your story. So that when you come into here, you'll see the same. Oh, actually, that's fun. Okay. Oops. Okay. So if you go into the, let's see, relationship story, signpost 2, scene 4. So if you come in here and you went into 2 and you broke this down, then the 4th one would be where you would see this thing here, where it says worth, rejection, evaluation, and acceptance. Now, there are 2 things. One, those would be an important scene, and it would be interesting to go into planes, trains, and look at, what happened in signpost 2 right before the midpoint? What happens there? But if you think of the story form, because everything is the same quad, it's like quads within quads. I forget what the scientific explanation of this is, but if you see a system in one part, so if you have something big, then whatever thing is making that big thing happen, you see the same thing happening down at the bottom. It's just repeated. So it's like a fractal. There's a specific name for that. So what I'm trying to say is this crucial scene is almost like a synopsis or an understanding of the entire through line of this particular through line. And then secondarily, which is something that John Duesenberry just pointed out, is it's most likely telling you what are the through lines that you need to focus the most on. These are the most important through lines. So where it used to be, oh, you could do whatever you want, which you could, but if you want to really promote this idea, if that's what you're trying to get across, then what this is doing is basically telling you, this is the most important through line. This is what you need to work on first. So if you look at the relationship story through line here, you'll see it has its own condition, adjustment, focus, and reevaluation. So these have always been in dramatic theory since the beginning, originally titled problem, solution, focus, and direction. And that's where what the through line is all about. Self-organizing system. That might be it. But it's something like, basically like I'm a person. And then when you have a community, that's a person of itself, but it's made up of people, which are made up of smaller people. There's something about that. It might be self-organizing system. It might be the same thing. But what I was saying here about the through line here, this focus, direction, problem, and solution, describe the entire through line, where all the problems are, but spatially. So somehow they're related in terms of looking at it in terms of space. When you look at in terms of time, you can't really get time out of focus, direction, problem, and solution. And you can get a little bit of it from the signposts. But if you want to get something that's closer to storytelling, it was actually telling like the essence of that through line. If you look at these elements, like if you think about planes, trains, and automobiles, one, the relationship story is the most important part, right? If you look at the poster, there's the poster, right? The two guys, might be bigger. The two guys here, it's the relationship. It's the whole thing. So it's such a great thing that they become friends. Obviously, John Candy's like influence character, just totally bugging him. But main character, it's even when you go through it, you're like, I think I can see the main character's feeling, but it's not as robust. But definitely the relationship. So when I go back into these trains and I come down, oh no, I'm sorry, I just did the same thing. So if I come back into planes and trains here, you'll see relationship story is one of the ones that's definitely the most important. One of the key aspects of the story. And you'll see it's all about worth. So like self-esteem, whether or not it's worth it to help somebody out, just the worthiness of being with a friend. And then if you look at the temporal things, so you just think it is as 1, 2, 3, 4, you get the whole story of the relationship here. It's like rejection, and there's a bunch of evaluation, and then there's reevaluation at the end, there's acceptance. And I did not expect this at all. This is all something that happens just based on how everything is put together. There's just a couple little formulas that go through every single quad and do all this stuff, but this is what ended up. And to me, you could actually take this, and what I'm going to do is provide an area where if you come into the through lines here, you can illustrate them. So in addition to knowing the concern and stuff of that particular through line, I'm also going to make this, you'll be able to type it in here so that you can come in here and just quickly illustrate the entire through line, because this should be what it feels like as you go through the whole thing. So the John Candy part here, influence character is probably less than, not as obvious. I'd have to see it again. This one is like really clear to me from the very beginning. It's just, it feels like magic to me that it's here. This one could be his ability to move around and how he is able to interact with people, the acceptance part. And then of course the rejection is all the sad stuff at the end where he's just, I feel like at the end he's in his car or something. He's just a fine, forget it, that kind of stuff. I have to watch it again just to remember. But this one definitely stands out as, oh, okay, this is a key thing. And I could actually write a synopsis for the through line, seeing this path here. So if I have any comments or thoughts?
Two, this neck, one on the induction with John Candy, I'm thinking of inferences. He's always inferring things about people as he goes up to everyone everywhere and buddies them. And deduction, who knows? But the other thing is that, is there going to be a way that we could push a magic button and have these pop out ahead of time besides breaking it down all the way through our whole story to find out where it's at?
Oh, if it's already been made, yes. Because it needs to be made first. And right now, I just looked, there were 2,000 in there. So since March, about 2,000 have been made out of the 32,000. So 30,000.
Okay, that's what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, it needs to be constructed so that I can look at this and find out what scenes are messed up. So it actually has to go through it and justify the whole story. I can't just do it from nothing.
So sorry, what I didn't quite understand. Maybe it was the question I didn't understand. Like, which stories wouldn't have the crucial scenes shown?
Oh, no, every story will have crucial scenes. I meant in the presentation of a Storyform here.
Oh, yeah.
Below here, because it's otherwise I could see them, but
Yeah.
nobody else. I just need to add it here, which is not difficult. I just need to. It didn't occur to me because I was just too excited about it.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But Jim, so my question actually went to when I'm drafting my own stories. And so I've got my initial story form in there. Do I now have to break down to get to all the beats before it'll just pop up?
Yep.
And where's it going to pop up at on my own story?
Oh, it's there right now. If you go into your narrative,
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's specifically because, remember Wednesday, you were there. I go through everything and I was like, no, this is not going to happen. Like trying to search to where it was. And so Wednesday night stayed up late and, okay, this is how I can go in there and figure it out. So anybody that's made a story since March has access to this. And then they can just drop right into it and see what it is. It's,
so it'll show up underneath at that narrative, the same place our premise shows up. Okay.
Because I feel like it's a part of this because it's like,
right.
It's one narrative and then here. So like Back to the Future, I got to put the signposts. I am going to add that too. So like Marty work and the signpost through his future. So work to future. This is very weird. It works much better with Young Guns, if you've ever seen that movie, of Billy the Kid, because it's totally this order and they're both the same story form. But certainly George here, the confidence, preconscious, help, free, hinder, and control. That's his arc, basically. And then the objective story, avoid, control, free, like craziness, and then pursuit at the end. That works really nice. And I don't know if you noticed, but one of these is always, it just flips the problem and solution, but actually works out well. So that one's really interesting. I need to go back in and make sure. I was very surprised that there were 3 scenes. In my head, there are only 2. And it's funny because when I used to meet up with Melanie for lunch and I would ask her certain questions, she doesn't remember it. I don't remember how it works. So we have to go figure it out yourself. I'm totally in that spot right now, even though I made it all at the beginning of this year. So I have to go back in and see, okay, that's why, because it's extremely, you can't do it in your head just because of everything that goes into it. So I'm surprised that there's 3. I'm not surprised that there is 1 for holistic stories. So if I go into something like Forrest Gump, there's just 1 crucial scene. So hunch, proven, theory, and presumption, and self-interest, which is interesting because I wouldn't consider it self-interested, perhaps a lack of self-interest, but definitely it just goes with his gut. All the proven things as far as Mom always said life is like a box of chocolates. Then he does a lot of theory stuff for other people. I always think of theory like supposition. Suppose you did this, suppose you did that. And then the presumption at the end, almost like, and you're going to take care of this child on your own sort of stuff. That one's good. I think something like.
In the Forest Gump one, sorry. I'm trying to understand if the crucial scene lines up with the words for the crucial scene, how it reflects in the premise line, like running rampant, what words on the crucial scenes line up with either running rampant or secure your family. I don't remember all the, yeah.
So if you just tap here,
Yep.
and look at the subjective premise, free is the main character element. that here.
Yeah.
And you'll see that here. That's why.
Okay. Yep. That's what I looked. That's what I meant. So how it lines up. The crucial scenes are going to line up with what's in the premise, right?
Yep. Because that's where it starts. And it just depends if it's a changed or a steadfast story. This is a steadfast story. So that might be why it has 3. I just have to remember how it all got put together. But that's why you're seeing the disruption. This one was very surprising to me. We'll look at other steadfast stories and see.
And what is the superior family part? What's the superior family?
That would be the goal at the top, the
Okay.
objective premise. Yeah, and that won't be reflected here, except that these are all part of that narrative family, like the aspirational part. So if I go into subtext, I go to premise builder, free here as a part of this aspirational family. So that's what you see obtaining. That's why it's focusing in on that.
I love the setup. It works for my brain very well. I don't know how it does for anybody else's brain, but it's very good for my brain.
Right? Yeah. This is totally experimental and like brand new. So we'll see. But something about it just feels closer to storytelling.
Yeah. So you'll have the one quad that has like the one scene that has some of the elements from the premise, but then often there might be another scene that has totally different area. Like that perception actuality one kind of coming a little out of left field, but it's cool that way.
What's another steadfast story? What's another one that everybody knows?
Jungle Book. Live. I think he's steadfast there. Mowgli.
Oh yeah, let's do Jungle Book. Jungle Book's actually a really cool one, and then I'll do one in a sec. So Jungle Book here. So this is steadfast one. Oh, see, but this is not right. Oh, this is the. Hold on, sorry about that. Should be more. The current Jungle Book.
Premise, I haven't seen either, but they have 2 different premises.
Yeah, I thought the one I did was holistic. Well, steadfast. Hold on a sec. What I was thinking of. There's one I did recently at Disney film that was holistic. Was Peter Pan. That's the one I was thinking. I looked at this one. This one.
So yours show these crucial scenes, your nice computer, because you actually have input all of these as story forms.
Yeah.
When we go to look at these, the done stories, ours aren't going to show up crucial scenes yet.
Yeah. So like that Peter Pan one, I just have to put that in there. I'll do that today so that you can go and look them up and stuff. But hunch, expectation, theory, determination, if you think of Wendy, is what she has to do to work on overcoming, I think, is it war in the past and present? Okay. What's another?
Did you say MC Signpost 1, Scene 5?
Oh, did it? That would be a mistake. It could have.
It's scene that you have to add.
No, that might be in a math problem. So this might be, if that says 5, this should probably say signpost 2. Let's see if that's what's going. If this first one is work, so it needs to be done. Yeah. So that's a good math problem. Thank you for reading that out. So yeah, it should be, there's just 4 scenes per signpost. Oh, I want to do Frog's Tale. That was really fascinating. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with it.
I am.
Other class.
Oh, yeah. So if I go to Bronx Tale, this is cool. So you think of Bronx Tale, you just think of the main character, you think of their attitude. And so if you think of the whole story, like unending, like he's not going to stop hanging out with Sunny and doing all that stuff, then he has to deal with the results of hanging out with a bad guy and with his father. Then he has to try and end it, where he gets shut out from Sunny, and tries to stop doing that stuff. And then at the end, just goes with the flow. Life, it's about the journey. It's not about the destination. And his attitude, this is the thing that freaked me out. So his attitude is what is like the heart of the story, like that, not the heart, I would say the essence of the story. But that's not even part of his through line at all. Like attitude is not anywhere here. But yet it works perfectly. The other one that I thought was really cool in that.
Jim, is that because he's a steadfast character? Is that how?
That would be why there is, because it's holistic. That's why there's one. Wyatt's attitude is like so complex. The idea that would be the one thing that landed in there, and it's so perfect, right? Worth is so perfect for planes trains. If I go to, oh, sorry, where I get super excited, prestige. If I go into the prestige, destiny in the plot, and his sense of self is the key part, which is his whole ego and the great Anton. That's nowhere. Pretty sure it's a character. Sorry, sense of self is not nowhere. It's the catalyst in the relationship story, yet it so perfectly describes his growth, the presumption. And if the very first scene gets set up, the presumption that, oh, I'm going to be the greatest. And then he has to prove himself. And then he goes to Tesla and puts together all this sort of cause and effect as to how Borden's actually doing it. And then at the end, just goes with his gut and like that feeling. And I actually completely wrong with his hunch as to what's really going on and get shot for it. Meanwhile, the plot are two magicians destined both to destroy each other and then also destined for greatness. The desire for fame, conflict over their talents, their abilities, going to Tesla to be fair plot-wise with Borden, and then screwing each other over at the end, the unfairness and the inequities of throwing him in jail and all that stuff. So it's completely insane. I don't know. It blows me away. And I did not expect. This just happened Wednesday. I was just messing around with, I think Nick and Levi were there.
Right.
Oh, it was
Daniel Williams.
Does anybody want me to check another one while I'm here?
Yeah, I had a couple questions because I know this is new, and so I don't know if anything's like locked down in the understanding of it. But when we go to actually write these scenes or approach writing them, I'm wondering, would these scenes maybe be good for foreshadowing, or would these scenes be good to try and tell a microcosm of the entire story in?
Yes.
Or is that kind of what's going to happen? Because I don't know, and it's kind of hard for me to identify what that actual scene is, just looking at those elements, like when you look at a story. So it's hard for me to get like a feeling of what that would play out in practice. And I'd be curious to see developing this further if there's anything else that you could figure out like that. 'Cause I don't know.
Right now, just intuitively, my guess is that it's like the essence of that through line. And I would use it as a synopsis in a way of like quickly getting to the heart of the story. It's very interesting that it probably means this phone is not right. It's the first time I've seen nothing. And also foreshadowing. So if you look at the prestige, that's a really great example of it, is his main character is the very first scene, your very first introduction to, and just his whole conversation with Michael King, Borden, and Piper Paraboo, I think his original wife. He's just doomed. You're just like, as far as foreshadowing, this is what happens in the scene, and it's also what happens over the course of the whole thing, which is, it's like, what? Okay.
Wow. Where does that MC Signpost 1, Scene 1 actually show up in the movie? I actually haven't seen The Prestige, believe it or not. So,
Oh, you should definitely check it out. It's the very first introduction we have of him.
okay. So it actually is at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. They didn't spin that around or whatever.
No, that's pretty much towards the very, very beginning.
Yeah. Cool.
Give me another story. Anybody want to see something in particular?
Maybe Die Hard, because I know that one more.
I don't know if I've done that. I think so. This looks new. Oh, see, look, it's the same. Storyform is Back to the Future and Young Guns, so I'm going to have the same.
Confidence of, I forget the guy's name.
Yep.
The other
Cop, right?
the confidence to be able to shoot the guy.
Goes to help, then he runs away, and then all kinds of resistance, and then at the end he takes control. This is Bruce Willis. Perception. I'm pretty sure this is attitude here or standpoint.
Well, I think at the very beginning he feels like he's the only one that's perceiving anything. Everybody, no, what? Like he tries to call the cops and then he gets dismissed easily. And he can't get any help from anybody. Actuality kind of seems like he's the only one doing this. I don't know about order and chaos. Those feel a little.
Oh, he calls in the cops. That's order.
Yeah, I guess the cops are causing more chaos for him than.
And he just wreaks havoc, like at the end.
Yeah.
Perception and actuality play well with how he's playing games with the terrorists. They're playing games with each other. Remember, where are you? I've got your guns. That whole thing going on.
And the fact this is in work, like for Billy the Kid, what's his name? Bruce Willis's character, and then Back to the Future. They're all about work. I know it's a cheat because they're steadfast, but just feels.
So how about Ford versus Ferrari? Since there was that controversy on that,
Let's see. Is this the most recent one? I think this is.
I'm thinking in a sense this also is like a good check.
All right, let's just make sure. This is the one that is a failure, bad tragedy decision. Is that where I ended up? I have to remember where I ended up with this. I think that's right. Is that right, Nick?
Yeah, that's probably where you ended up. I think there was an argument of whether there was failure or success.
Okay. But this is definitely where I ended up. So
let's see what it shows.
Main character, denial, proaction, reaction, certainty, potential.
Doesn't, yeah, I'm trying to think if it really reaches out and grabs me at all.
Trying to remember who the main character was. Was that Matt Damon or Christian Bale?
Matt Damon's complete. No, he can't.
He's a showman. Yeah, maybe he's an insurance salesman. No, it's not over. It's just the next deal's coming right along.
And he takes charge in the beginning, then manages people's reactions, then absolutely certain of what path to take. And then at the end, lost potential. I could make that work. This one is, I had to watch it again in 6 months and see if I still think that's the right story form. This one's troublesome for me.
How about a fun one while you were sleeping?
Oh, you know what? I still haven't put that one in here. I'm not sure. Oh, isn't this going to be the same Back to the Future one?
Oh, is it the same story form as Back to the Future?
Almost.
Word.
Difference is, the premise, it's a void, not. So that's interesting because this is the same.
The top line's the same.
The top two are the same. The different one is the influence character. So what's his face?
The Rock?
Yeah, The Rock. Support, avoid, pose, and pursuit. I think I could probably make them.
And it fits. Doesn't he like take off? And I heard an argument that it's pretty similar to the story of Star Wars and like the character of Han Solo, like he takes off and then he comes back at the end.
Oh, I think so. Oh, that'd be interesting. Let's look at
That one's in there too.
let's see Star Wars. I think we have both. I haven't run the Han Solo one, but let's see here. Nope, not that one. This is not.
Maybe you called it Empire Strikes Back.
No, I think this is. I've read it a couple of times, but I think this is the most recent. Oops. Very fair.
You've created a Frankenstein and it's disowning you.
Maybe is that another one? I'll look, but I don't hallway too. Whether or not this is correct. Not that one, but maybe this one. All right, it's invading, trying to validate yourself. Find right. And hoping this. All right, let's see. Test, trust.
Is that when Obi-Wan dies?
3, scene 3.
Because isn't when they leave the Death Star, the actor?
I believe.
That makes sense. Like he died and then he's a ghost and he's able to talk, so it's like he never died kind of thing.
So there's the challenge in the beginning, then there's the trust and the force.
Yeah.
Then I'm on down.
And there's a living on. Isn't that insane?
That's crazy. It's like a reevaluate. Hey, this is what's really going on. And then the relationship is like what's important. Trying to make something happen. Trust is shared. That's interesting. And the challenge to him. And then the effect. I can see that possibly working out. It'd be interesting is, I have a different, I'm not completely sold on this yet. And I will likely go back to the older version, but the Matrix will.
Yeah, we should look at the different.
What is the one I'm currently have is this crazy one. Address resistance towards being predestined to be someone by balancing your overwhelming awareness with your being self-perceptive. And so this is the thing I was playing with. This could probably be its own class. But the one that we did in the user group is a balance between faith and disbelief, which there's a tremendous amount of. He's beginning to believe and all that stuff. But I always like at the end, and I could be convinced that it's faith. But when he does the whole thing where he gets shot, but he's not dead. And then he gets back up, and then he's just like, this stuff. More so when he looks out, when he stops all the bullets, they do the thing, all the bullets are coming. And then when he looks out and he can see the Matrix the way it is, I always got that as balancing self-awareness with awareness. Like my own self-perception of what's going on is what's able to bring it down. Not so much the belief. I don't get the belief. I get that that's what they talked about the whole time. But as what saved the day, I feel like it's that. And then the other thing that I really like is when you use the holistic premise in terms of the original, the main plot point has to do with morality, which it's really hard for me to see. Whereas this destiny thing, I see much more as what's playing out. So anyways, all that to say,
Would it be like a perception actuality thing in there somewhere? Because there's so much of that throughout the movie too.
that's the other thing. It's like, it's
OS.
the main character here,
Oh, main character. Sorry,
duality to perception. So let's do that was.
I mean, Jim, isn't there also the possibility that, like, you're picking stories and you're saying that they have the right story form, and you're also using partly your intuition, but it's also possible that the Wachowskis got it wrong, that there's a actual, what you're saying is true in that last scene, that somehow they went astray for that last part, even though the whole rest of that illustration was a poor illustration for what the whole rest of the story was. And that's where to take it as gospel that every story that is in that you've chosen as a story form, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's just, and yeah, you're totally, what you said is totally right, for sure. Like, it could be just that it's messed up. I don't want to say it's messed up as if somehow.
It's the illustration. It's the illustration. Just had to illustrate what the rest of the other, what are you calling it? The faith versus disbelief part is not what that illustrates. It illustrates in grammatica, speak, awareness, self-awareness, however you want to say. I don't remember exactly the words, but so that they pick, because it is hard when you're writing, you have all these images in your mind and then you pull away what doesn't belong, but it could just be that final illustration is problematic.
Yeah, and I think it could be problematic in terms of the structure of the story. I just have my other things I have a really hard time, because The Matrix, when that film came out, I think 96, it kicked off the whole perception actuality fascination for the next 10 years. So like Sixth Sense and American Beauty and like that whole culture of perception and that kind of stuff, all that understanding, all those really great Usual Suspects, those fun things that are up in that corner were part of that culture. And so like faith and disbelief are difficult for me to see. And in the same way that Chris Nolan says, I always make everything accurate, non-accurate, he makes everything in the obtaining area.
But I will say in the Matrix movie that what makes, to me, the story is very strong because of the metaphor, right? It's what the Matrix is a metaphor for society. The thing what actually happens in the movie isn't really, it's separate from the metaphor, if you will. The metaphor is just the context of the movie, and the story is separate from that. Like it's related, but it's separate. And that's all I'm thinking is it's not a perfect, because that story world stands, that metaphor, that story world stands for the franchise. It works for all of it. And so that's where I guess like, yeah, that's the part that we've gone to, but that it might not be part of the plot story for that, or character arc for that particular, the first one, whatever, Matrix one, whatever it's called.
And so the assumption here is that we're looking to see the structure that most closely brings to order all the stuff that's going on in the story. So I love this for The Matrix, to go from self-aware to then awareness of what's really going on to then projecting himself out into it. And then at the end, some sort of speculation. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, cool.
I would think Mike would freak out about this.
It might be like, we need to save Morpheus. Would that be projection or would that be speculation?
Oh, I would say the projection part is when he goes into. Oh, I'm sorry. Projection is all the stuff with the Oracle, right? Like, you're not the one. Which, by the way, anybody notice she gives him a cookie before she gives him the information?
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you log on to. So nowadays it's legal that you have to have a cookie first. Anyways, I just noticed that. And so we pointed that out, which is interesting. I'm not sure if they did that on purpose, but she's the Oracle, so maybe she was felt that this would be the future. And then there's a certain amount of speculation in the last act for sure when he's just like going for it. And then, of course, his last phone call. Complete self-awareness at the beginning. There's something going on. And it's, what's going on? And then overall prerequisites, so the steps for breaking yourself free out of that. So I love this. Makes me love the story form even more. What's that?
Edit.
So that's another mistake. So then that scene would be
Act 2, scene 2 or 1.
which the driver sort of thing is when Morpheus gets caught.
So prerequisites, that scene is probably the one where he says, we're going to need guns, lots of guns, which would also fit in the projection area too, I think. And okay, we've been in some fights. Now let's just get lots and lots of guns.
Prerequisite throughout the whole entire movie, like with this training and just everything. Like,
This is it. All right, but let's look and see. I want to see the other Matrix, and let's see here. Let's go. What did it have?
if you have time, I'd like to look at Shawshank, but only if you want to.
Yeah. All right. Oh, Dream. Oh, dang it. Dream. Okay, so these are the ones with, let me just make sure, looking out for the greater good. Okay, so this is, see what I'm saying? Address resistance towards looking out for the greater good by balancing your overwhelming self-doubts with your personal truth. All right.
Oh, so what are those words? What are the big words that go with the
The
look?
big words, this is altruism,
Uh-huh.
the morality. That's the plot. And
Yeah.
then the two are disbelief
Okay.
and then faith.
Okay.
So then here we have main character and influence character. So a little interesting. Disbelief, support, oppose, faith. So that feels good. Conscience, temptation, disbelief, faith. That's good too. I don't know. Does anybody have a guess or a feeling as to which one feels better or any thoughts? I was hoping this would be way off.
There's a good reason why they both
Like-
feel good then.
Like, is it? I've always felt like it's theoretically possible that a story could perfectly fulfill two separate story forms.
Yeah.
I think it's probably super rare. It's almost like it's a sub story that is the whole story.
Or what Judith was saying, where this is what they had intended, but then something else came through. So there's two parts of this. The fact that they both end on faith is crazy to me.
Is the influence character that the Anderson died? Is that the
Oh no, it's
Morpheus and Trinity, maybe.
Morpheus and Trinity. This even feels for Trinity. Yeah.
So the one thing about this story form that I've always felt like the altruism or morality part is you kind of have to zoom out a lot to see it. Like it's not really, you don't really feel it that much in the movie. You feel it a little bit with that Cypher guy because he doesn't really want to keep fighting for other people. And like the whole reason they're doing this and eating oatmeal every day or whatever it is they have to eat is because they're like trying to free people and trying to make for a better world. But that's not really, it's almost, I don't know, you just have to pull back so far. It's not really in the movie.
I'm gonna have to run this one again too, because this is one of the very first ones I did. Because the fact that there's two in a holistic is suspect to me. I'd say if there is just one, it's likely just this one, which still works. But
Yeah.
the fact that he's in a dream, which would be using this.
Jim, I just wanted to show you, I put in the chat. So earlier today, like logged in and I had no idea you'd made this. I hadn't seen your announcement yet. And then I saw the crucial scenes on my story and I was like, I had a vague idea of what they were because I think you mentioned this. I was like, oh, these are the ones where the quads are mixed up. And then I looked at it and it was like, holy cow, because I don't know if you can see the chat there, but so until this last hour, I didn't realize we could look at it as a summary of the whole story like you've been. And that's also really cool. But I was even looking at the particular scenes that were chosen. And it's really interesting because in this story, the main character, who's usually the narrator for most of the scenes, is in denial about her father's death. So that, and that's the MC problem is a pose. And so but it's like an unreliable narrator. So because she pretends or doesn't believe that her father died. So through the story, you don't know either as the reader, because there's these tiny little hints that something's off, but I'm trying to make it so it's not that easy to guess. Maybe you could guess. But anyway, that scene, I see signpost 4 scene 2, is the scene where she finally admits it, and it's like fully revealed that actually her father died and he's not just in England, she's been saying the whole time or whatever. So I just thought that was crazy that it picked that one.
And then the same thing with the relationship story one.
Well, the relationship story one, that one's really interesting. I think that particular scene is that there's some weird stuff that happens at the end of Signpost 3. Like she's actually in a different, like an alternate universe in Signpost 3. And she meets, like throughout Signpost 3 or Act 3, she's met a cop, like an alternate version of her father who's still alive in that other world. And that relationship stuff, there's a lot of relationship stuff between them. And it's really interesting because that speculation beat really fits in that scene, because it's like they have to say bye to each other because she's leaving that world and they're probably never going to see each other again. But there's like this sort of, I don't know, like speculative idea of what's going to happen. Are we ever going to see each other again? And I don't know. I think it fits really well. And looking at them as summaries too, I think they work super well too. Like the Need one is really interesting in that influence character, because she's like a 12-year-old girl and she really like just needs somebody to help her and believe her, kind of. And like through the story, initially it's like her mom, I think. It's like her mom just doesn't really believe her and doesn't know what to do with her, kind of thing. And it kind of goes forward through like that. So anyway, I just thought that was pretty awesome how well it fit.
Well, that's great. So that's what I think is so great, is it's not only is it a summary of the whole through line, the essence of the through line, but then it also is like a key turning point.
Yeah. Yeah. A key turning point. Yeah.
So here, I mean, this can get you the idea for the entire thing, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing I noticed too, and maybe you can help verify this, like when you have in your story, sometimes you have multiple influence characters sharing the IC role, and maybe same with the relationship story. Like when I look at these, it feels like the relationship stuff that happens in the first act is more like the change stuff. And then the relationship stuff that happens in the second. And so it's a summary of the whole relationship story, but some of those relationships aren't really in the whole story. Like they're not really present for the whole story because a certain person doesn't come into it until after the midpoint or something. So in that case, I'm not really sure that I see those first parts with them. It's almost like they're just fulfilling parts of the relationship story.
But then I'm sorry. So the influence characters are both part of the relationship story?
Some of them are, yeah. But what I'm saying is just if a particular character or relationship is only there for part of the story, then you might not see that whole arc for that one person. It's more like that whole arc for, say, like disbelief, faith, support, oppose. It's like when you consider the whole influence character through line.
Yes. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe each character would take it, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, excellent. All right.
It's just a development of the perspective. They're not characters. Don't listen to your heart.
All right. That's it. That's it for now. Thanks.
Thank you.
And if you come up with any ideas or any sort of stuff like that, I know Mike's always sharing, this is amazing. So that's always great to see. And then anybody else, if they run into that, and I'll add it so that it's in all the story forms, so you can, at least the ones that are built, you can go through and check it. And I'll make sure the matrix works here. I'll figure out why Elf wasn't showing anything, and I'll fix the scene 5 error. I'll fix that stuff.
When did you first get the idea that you could look at these and like, when did you first realize it was like a summary of the whole thing?
It would be Wednesday when I was sick. I always knew, like the last couple of weeks, just because I've worked with so many people to walk them through the whole process, you just get a rhythm, and then you're like, oh, the reason this is messed up is because this is where the story starts. So it's got juice in it. There's like really important stuff in there. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to mark these as crucial scenes. And then when we were talking about it on Wednesday, I just looked at it. I was like, oh, this is actually like a summary of the whole thing. And it makes sense because it's where it starts. And then that pattern is, it's not repeated, but it's the inspiration for stuff that happens above, depending on the direction you're going. And so and it's just one of those things. Oh, gut instinct. It's only because I could not have done it if I hadn't built the whole engine, because then I know why it's doing that. That's where the story starts. So then I'm like, there's something really important here, and I know it doesn't affect all the other stuff, because this is just where the hot spot is coming from. And then just when we look at it in terms of all these examples, you look at it over the course of the story and you're just like, oh, that's great. And it's so much more approachable, closer to storytelling, because it's closer at the bottom of the character, closer to the audience, than the signposts. So present, progress, future, past for Neil was not as exciting as disbelief, support, close faith of like his arc. You're like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
Somebody could add some AI sort of stuff here and actually write your synopsis much more easily with these than they could with past, progress, future, present. That's the exciting part to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just click a button and then I could grab illustrations and put this together.
I think AI, Judith, is artificial intelligence.
Yeah, which is what I had started to do in February, but then got distracted by completing the engine. And so that might pick up again now that I see this. Cool.
Cool.
Very good.
Oh, and then the other thing was, which is what John brought up, is that these are I think I did go over this. The focus of your story would be these 3 lines, which I thought was
Yes. Right.
Oh, the other one was, this was the fun one too. This is the one I wanted to do was Lord of the Rings, I think. Is the right one? It's true. Nope.
There's a reason why some are going to be in relationship stories, some are going to be an overall story, or vice versa.
I'm sure there's a reason. I wouldn't say there's a reason. It's just what it is.
Okay. Does that kind of, or would you suspect that's maybe because those are more important, or the focus or something?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely the focus,
Okay.
but I'm not sure if you'll see a pattern. So here, I love this. Like for Frodo, all emotional, doing what's rational, then the temptation, and then at the end, conscience.
Yeah, that's really nice
Yeah.
for the whole trilogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why it takes so long for them to walk?
That's the delay for it.
9 hours.
Off. Keep putting it off. Procrastinate. Okay, finally we'll get there. All right. Cool. Thanks for that. Don't forget to check out Secession, and then next week we'll get to that.
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Also.
Cheers, everybody.